Hey guys, so let's find out how I found the best utensils for outdoor activities, camping, all that kind of stuff, or no. These are called Humangear GoBites Trio. And the idea is that it's a nice container with 3 utensils on the inside. A fork, a spoon, a knife, and actually there's a bonus 4th one, which is a little toothpick. So the problem that I was trying to solve was I wanted some utensils that are nicely packed in a container so that they're nice and clean when I pull them out of my backpack, and also once they get dirty, I can put it inside my backpack without getting all of the stuff inside, wet or dirty with bits of food, right? And these seem to fit perfectly the bill. These are around $20 Canadian, especially if you go to their website and purchase it through them. If you go through Amazon, sometimes the prices are kind of strange. Like right now, they're listed for $45. I'm not sure why. I did buy them on Amazon a while back, like around 2 years ago, and they were about $20, $21, something like that. So these are pretty great for what they are, and especially for the price. So let's talk about each of these utensils in depth. Let's start with the spoon. The spoon is very nicely designed. It has some really cool and smart features to it. So first, let's start with the handle. The handle is somewhat, like kind of like a triangle shape, which adds like more rigidity and just makes it feel a little bit more solid. It also kind of helps your finger guide the spoon while you're eating the food, right? It just kind of provides that feedback where you are on the spoon. Are you off to the side? Are you off to the other side? It just lets you find the center a little bit better. So that's one thing, and all of these have the same kind of handle. It's triangle shape on the spoon, triangle shaped on the fork, and on the knife it's actually like a double triangle. It's kind of like a diamond shape. It's basically sticks out on both sides. So then we can look at the spoon part itself. The cool thing here is that this triangle kind of smoothens out, which gives you a nicer area for your lip to slide on. The downside is that it becomes more flat over here, so it's probably the weaker point. So if you would exert a lot of force, that is where it might actually break. But I haven't had an issue with these. I've used them for about 2 years. I don't use them all the time, but here and there, and they've survived perfectly. So the spoon itself, right, the cradle of the spoon, if we compare it to a regular spoon, the shape is quite different. As you can see, the normal spoon is more egg-shaped, right, compared to this one. This one has a wider sides and also kind of like a tapered corners at the top, and flat sides over here at the top corners roughly. So what that does is it basically lets you scrape inside of the containers better, right? Because you have this corner. It lets you reach deeper into the container, trying to get all the food pieces from the corners, the edges, all that kind of stuff. So that part is really nice. And also it is actually deep enough to scoop some soup with it, right? To actually eat liquidy items, which is pretty awesome, because some packages like this, utensils like this, they don't really offer that functionality, or they don't really work for that as well, because the spoon is usually much flatter, right? So that is the spoon. Now let's talk about the fork. The fork also has some cool features. It again has this triangle for the handle, and over here what it does, it's actually gives you some surface area to eat some more food, right? If you look at the regular fork, this part over here, it has very little surface area to actually grab anything like liquidy or not super solid. This does provide you with much more surface area. So in a pinch, if you have 2 people that are eating soup, one of them can be using the spoon itself, but the other one could technically use the fork a little bit and get a little bit more soup out of it versus the regular kind of fork. It also has tapered edges on the side of the fork, right? If you look over here, there's a slight taper, making this edge quite a bit sharper than it would have been. And that is obviously nice for when you're eating things like sausages, right? When you're trying to kind of cut them into pieces and you don't want to use a knife for whatever reason, you just want to dirty this guy. With this guy, you can actually do that, right? You can kind of chop the food up and eat it up, no problem, right? So that is a nice thing about the fork. Now, the knife. The knife is a good one too. It actually has a hidden feature in it. So the knife, as I said, it's more of a diamond shape handle, so it gives you that even more rigidity for its size. And the knife itself is quite sharp. Yes, you probably wouldn't cut really hard foods with it, but things like chicken, like something fibery, this can do it because it's quite sharp and it's also somewhat serrated. Yeah, they're not like really sharp serrations, they're more of baby serrations, but they still provide enough of grip on the food, which is pretty awesome. The hidden feature inside this knife is that this little metal piece, it's a bottle opener. So it just gives you a nice option to open bottles in the pinch. I don't know if this metal piece extends throughout the whole handle. If it doesn't, then based on how much force you apply to open the bottle, there's a chance it could break. Or if you decide to use this as a multi-tool for some emergency situations, if you have to apply a lot of force, then that could be an issue. But I obviously haven't had any problems with it, and normal, like opening a bottle, it doesn't require that much force, so it works pretty good. And now let me show you the toothpick. The toothpick kind of sits underneath the knife inside of this little container. It's a little bit awkward to get to, but it's not too bad. Right, so the toothpick is just a standard plastic toothpick. On one end, it's quite sharp. On the other side, it's also quite sharp, but it's tapered. It's like flat and flattens from both edges, coming to like a flat scraping edge at the top that's slightly tapered as well. So it's pretty good. There's only one toothpick, so if you want to use a toothpick and throw it out, this is probably not the best idea for it, but it's not too bad. The other thing about this container that's actually quite nice is that, let me just insert the knife the right way. What's quite nice is that there's quite a bit of space inside of the container, right? So if you look, there's all this space over here, all the space over here, and once you put it together, all the items are not completely flat against each other. So that gives you an ability of carrying some extra things with you on the go, right? If you are a fan of like wooden toothpicks, or like a little bit of floss, things like that, you can kind of shove it in this container and not worry about it. It's going to be kept together and it's going to be there when you need it. Once you eat some food, and once you're done with your fork, you can put it in, take a wooden toothpick or a floss and just clean your teeth up and ready to go, right? So that's pretty good. The other thing that's pretty nice is that these come with lifetime warranty. I haven't really had a chance to test that out, so I'm not sure how the company would react to that and how well they actually honor their warranty, but just at least having lifetime warranty for such a cheap product, which is only $20, that's pretty fun. One more thing is that these utensils are heat resistant up to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can easily put these into a dishwasher, right, and clean that all up. One thing I'm not sure about is the container. The container seems pretty flimsy and definitely a different kind of plastic, so I'm not too sure if this could go in the dishwasher and if this can withstand 400 degrees, but it's still like easy to clean with a little bit of soap, and you just put it to dry. It's not that big of a deal. The other part that's nice about this container is, if I get one utensils out, as you can see, the utensil are held, each of those utensils besides the knife are held by 4 little plastic bits that protruding from the container. So these plastic bits obviously work on the flexibility of the plastic, right? Once you put the utensil in, they kind of flex out, letting the utensil drop in and then kind of lock it into place. The thing that's good is that there's 4 of them, because plastic, as we know, over time it might break, and the fact that there's 4 of them at least gives you a little bit more flexibility for the future in case 1 or 2 break off, right? So that is pretty well thought out. At least it's not just two bits on one bit on one side, one bit on the other side, and that is it. Right now, the other benefit of these guys is the length and the size of the utensils themselves, right? If we take a fork and we take a normal fork, as you can see, it is only slightly bit shorter than the regular fork, which actually sits quite well in the hand, right? Like when you're using it, even if you're using it quite far away from the tip, it still provides you with a good enough length to not make you feel like you're using those like tiny little forks that are kind of uncomfortable to use, right? So it's just a perfect amount of length to be able to save some on the space, but also give you a long enough handle to actually use it well. So that is pretty good. The container also has a really nice space for your finger to get into and open the container, right? Sometimes some of these handles or some of these containers don't really think about how we would be opening them and closing them all the time, and they would not provide a nice enough space. This space is pretty good. Yes, the container itself is quite flimsy, but at least you can open it and close it quite easily, which is pretty great. Yeah, so now let's talk about some of the negatives of these guys. There's quite a few, but I do love these. There's just a couple things that are not the best. So for the spoon itself, right, because of this fun, cool little shape that lets you scrape, the downside of this is that this part over here is quite wide, right? Compared to a normal spoon, it is a little bit wider, and you do feel it in the mouth, right? It is a little bit more awkward to kind of sip soup with this shape. So you kind of win some and lose some, right, in that department. That's the thing about the spoon. The fork has pretty thick ends to it, right? So as you can see, the regular fork, they're very thin, so it's much easier to pierce the food with. These guys are quite thick. And yes, of course, we know why that's done, because you need to provide some rigidity, right, to the material, because if you make these too thin, they would break off. So they have to be quite a bit thicker. But it is one downside to this design, or to just having plastic utensils in the first place. So that is that. Now, the container downsides. What are the problems with the container? The container is pretty good for what it does, right? It provides, it keeps all the gunk and everything on the inside. It also has some ventilation throughout the hinge, right? You can see there's some holes throughout the container, so it's not a perfect fit, which is, good because stuff on the inside can dry out nicer. But downside, if you have a lot of wetness on your utensils, obviously they're gonna leak out into your backpack, so you gotta keep that in mind, right? But another thing about this container that's a little strange, it's a little design quirk, right? Like where we have the curvature of the spoon and the fork, right? There's a spoon up here and the fork down here. We have a little bit of a raised bump on the container itself, right? So if you can see that on the camera, it's not completely flat on both sides. So in reality, it makes the shape quite weird. If you're trying to stuff it into like small container, if you have a lot of flat items in there and you're trying to lay it down, it is a little bit wobbly, and it is a little bit strange how these stick out. I feel like they could be packed a little bit better, especially because you have so much empty space on the inside of the container. Right, so let me show you how these actually work quickly so that you can tell the difference between these ones and how they compare to normal utensils, right? So first, let's try a fork and a knife, right, to see how they work. So basically, you can find a comfortable position in your hand for the fork and for the knife. Knife actually feels even better because of these like raised edges on both sides, right? But you can easily cut through chicken, right? You can pierce the chicken with the fork. It does require a little bit more force. You do feel that. So it's not as nice as a normal fork, but it's really good for a camping fork. It's pretty perfect, right? So let's hold this down and do a little cut. So I'm applying very little pressure. like barely any pressure at all. As you can see, it does cut through the soft piece of chicken and through the fibers, right? And this was almost no pressure at all. So it is pretty sharp and it does work pretty well. Now let's see how it can do with harder food, right? So this is what is it, cauliflower, which is usually not hard, but this is a frozen piece of cauliflower, right? So let's see how well it can cut through this. I'll apply a little bit more force, but still barely any force at all, and it still cuts through it like butter. So it is a pretty good knife. It is a fine fork. It does work for its purpose. It's not the most, awesome at what they do, like compared to a nice metal knife and a regular fork, because that pierces way easier and holds on to the food way better too. But it does work perfectly fine for camping utensils. Right now, let's look at this spoon and compare the spoons. The spoon, I have this orange pop, just basically so you can see the difference a little bit better. So now if we scoop it with a regular spoon, right, you get quite a bit of liquid inside of that, right? It's pretty normal, pretty easy to eat soup with it. It's all pretty good. This guy, as you can see, it picks up also quite a bit of liquid. So you're actually not missing much of the liquid at all, especially because it's wider on the sides. You can go through your soup quite quickly. It's not, you're not missing out in that department because it is quite deep. It's probably, well, it's almost as deep as a regular spoon, but the regular spoon just provides a nicer shape for when you're putting the food into your mouth, right? So that part is a little bit nicer. Okay, so now for the improvements of these utensils. Let me just pack them in here. The first thing that I want to talk about is the container itself. So the container has a couple interesting issues, as I mentioned, right? The little edges that stick out. So I think what could be done better is if you take the spoon and the fork and kind of position them together in some kind of way so that they can use their curvature together, right? I think you can slim down this container quite a bit, right? And also get rid of this weird shapes on both sides. Maybe have it only on one side, right? I think if this is packaged a little bit nicer, you could shrink down on the space also on the side, right? Because right now they're spaced out, both sides have a lot of wasted space on them, right? Over here and over here. If you put them together, the knife, you can also move it slightly over, you can save quite a bit of space. So that's one thing about the container. Second thing about the container is that these edges on the side, as you can see, they go all the way to the top of the utensil, the fork and the spoon. And the problem with it is that it's much more difficult to get these utensils out of the container, right? For the knife, it's very simple. You just pull on that and it comes out. You have a nice amount of room for your hands to go in, grab the knife from either side and pull it out. For the spoon and the fork, you have to either work with very little space that's left between the utensil and the container itself, or you have to go kind of on the edge of the utensils to pry it out, which is not the best, right? Like if they got rid of these plastic bits, then you could easily put your finger through it and kind of scoop it up, right? Being able to quickly get to your utensils would be much nicer. So that's another thing. One more thing about the package itself. As you can see, it is a somewhat translucent container, right? Which is kind of a cool design, I guess. But the problem with it, the good thing about it, the only thing that is good about it, in my opinion, is that it kind of lets you see what you have inside of the box, which could be nice. Like for some people, they keep forgetting their utensils and bringing just a fork or just a spoon or nothing at all. This could be nice. But the problem with it, it doesn't really show you if they're dirty or clean, so you still have to open up to see that. And like this logo that they have over here is only visible through a certain angle, right? Like if you position the light, hits it just right, you can see the logo. You can also see those shapes behind it, which kind of hurt the logo branding because it kind of, like makes this shape a little strange. It almost looks like a part of a logo in certain angles, like over here. But if they made this case not transparent, then the logo would stand out quite a bit more. And that would be nice from branding point of view, because once it's sitting down or somebody sees it as a case, from far away they can tell what this is, and if they really like it, they get to check it out online and hopefully buy it, hopefully making more money for the company. So that would be really nice. Another improvement that could be done to this case would be to experiment with the magnets a little bit. I know this would probably bring the price a bit higher than it is, of course, but it would be nicer because then you're not really relying on the flimsy plastic kind of bending over and over and over again. If you put magnets inside of these utensils and then you have magnet inside the case, you can easily attach it. Yes, it might still pop off when you're doing hardcore activities and shake it like crazy, but it still would just elevate the whole product quite a bit. It would just make it feel nicer, right? Magnets usually, when they're done right, they make the whole product experience a little bit nicer, especially when you're dealing with outdoor products. It's just what the community really enjoys and really likes. Right, so then another improvement that could be done is to the hinge. Because again, as I said, the hinge kind of focuses on the bending of the plastic only, right? So over time of bending, it could break off, right? These are not going to last forever. And yes, this is very, budget-friendly piece of gear, only 20 bucks, but it still would be nice because I've seen some hinges that are done basically where you have like a tube and a little C-shaped thing that goes over it, and then it doesn't use any bending of the plastic at all, right? It's just two pieces sliding against each other, making it last much, much longer. So that would be nice. One more last improvement that I want to talk about is, even if you keep the same design and keep all the space around it, right, there's a way that you could design it to use this empty shape or empty space for more things. Like for example, instead of just one toothpick, maybe add a couple toothpicks or a space to hold wooden toothpicks, because some of us don't really like reusing our toothpicks and washing them all the time. It's a little bit strange. Sometimes I just want to grab like a pack or like a small pack of wooden toothpicks and just throw them in here. Or if I want to use like a little, those holders with a toothpick and a little dental floss, that would be nice to incorporate into here so that I can like pack 5 or 10 with me, and then I have a nice container to store everything in together. Because right now, if I put those in, they will be moving around when I'm walking around. They would shake around and kind of get all over the place, especially if the utensils are dirty and you have like 5 or 6 of those toothpicks or flosses. It's just gonna get all a little bit nasty, a little bit dirty. But other than that, this is a really good package. Really good 3 utensils with, of course, some room for improvement, as every product is. Would I suggest this for 20 bucks? Definitely. It's a really great designed product. It has some really cool features, and it lasts quite a while, right? Like I've had this for about 2 years. I don't really use it every single day, or even every week for that matter, but it did get quite a bit of usage and it works pretty great. So yeah, thanks for this video. Thank you for sticking around, and yeah, like, subscribe, and I'll make way more videos about outdoor gears very shortly. So thanks so much. See you on the next one. Bye.